You know, when we think about empires, they usually have a pretty short shelf life. But Rome? Rome is a whole different story. So how on earth does an empire last for over 2,000 years? It's a huge question. Today, we're going to pop the hood and look at the actual engineering, the architecture really, that made this incredible civilization built to last. Let's dive in. Think about it. Most empires, they rise. They hit their peak, and then, usually within just a few centuries, they crumble. It's almost a law of nature. But Rome somehow managed to defy political gravity. It's the great exception to the rule. And the big question has always been, how did they pull it off?
And just to really let that number sink in, 2,206 years. From its mythical founding as a tiny city-state to the final fall of its eastern half in Constantinople, the Roman state endured. I mean, that's a timeline that stretches from the Bronze Age practically to the dawn of the Renaissance. It is just a staggering feat of survival.
To really get Rome's endurance, you have to start right at the beginning, at the foundation. And I mean the literal foundation, the land itself. Because long before the first legion ever marched, Rome was basically dealt a winning hand by geography. It gave them a massive head start in the great game of empires. Just look at how this all came together. First off, the city itself was built on 7 hills, which made for a fantastic natural fortress. Then you have the Tiber River, a perfect highway for trade out to the sea, but the city was just far enough inland to be safe from pirates and coastal raids. To the north, you've got the Alps, this huge wall that funnels any would-be invaders into predictable choke points. And the Italian peninsula itself, it's like a giant pier jetting into the Mediterranean, the perfect launchpad to project power in every direction. But Rome's luck wasn't just limited to its real estate. In a twist of fate, its most explosive period of growth just happened to coincide with this amazing period of unusually warm, stable weather. We now call it the Roman Climatic Optimum. And believe me, for a growing agrarian empire, this was an absolute game changer. And this chart here really spells it out. During that climactic optimum, crop yields just soared. This created a massive food surplus. That surplus did 2 things that were absolutely critical. It fed a booming population, which meant a steady supply of recruits for the army, and it generated the incredible wealth needed to pay and equip those legions. So when the climate later turned sour and yields dropped, suddenly the empire was in deep trouble, short on both soldiers and the cash to pay for them. Of course, an empire is nothing without an army, but the Roman military was so much more than just a powerful fighting force. Its true genius, its secret weapon, was its incredible ability to adapt and to evolve. The army of the early republic was a completely different beast than the one that guarded the frontiers of the late empire. And you can see that evolution right here on this timeline. It starts out as this part-time citizen militia using those rigid, Greek-style phalanxes. But as Rome expands into the rugged hills of Italy, they had to change. The result? The manipular legion, way more flexible. Then, as the empire got bigger, the army went pro, a full-time, salaried force. And in its final centuries, it changed again, relying more on mobile field armies and heavy cavalry. The takeaway is this: the Roman military was never too proud to change tactics when something wasn't working. But you know, maybe the most brilliant military innovation they ever had was the Auxilia system. This was an idea that turned conquered enemies into loyal Roman soldiers. It was just a masterstroke of both military strategy and social engineering. This chart is just incredible. At the height of the empire, more than half of the Roman army was made up of non-citizens. We're talking Gauls, Syrians, North Africans. These guys would serve for 25 years, and in return, they and their families got the ultimate prize, full Roman citizenship. This was a genius system. Not only did it give the empire a constant supply of specialized troops, but it turned people who might have been rebels into stakeholders in the whole Roman project. Okay, so force alone can't hold an empire together for 2,000 years. Rome's real secret sauce, the glue that held it all together, was its systems. The logistics, the laws, the ideas that bound all these diverse people together into one single functioning civilization. This table right here explains everything you need to know about the Roman economy. It was almost 30 times cheaper to ship heavy goods like grain or marble by sea than by land. So for the Romans, controlling the Mediterranean Sea wasn't just a military goal. It was the absolute key to their economic survival. The sea was their superhighway, connecting the whole Roman world and creating one giant integrated marketplace. Their legal system was another work of genius. They figured out early on that one rigid legal code just wasn't going to work for a massive multicultural empire.
So what did they do? They developed this clever two-tiered system. You had the jus civile, that was the law for Roman citizens. But for everyone else, they had the jus gentium, the law of nations, which was way more flexible and pragmatic. It was a practical approach that made Roman rule feel a lot more legitimate across the board. And then comes 212 AD, when the Emperor Caracalla issues an edict that changed everything. He granted Roman citizenship to every free man within the empire's borders. Just like that, with a single stroke of a pen, the legal line between the conquerors and the conquered was basically erased. It was a revolutionary move that really helped create a shared Roman identity. So, in an empire with hundreds of different gods and religions, how do you create a sense of unity? Well, the Romans came up with the imperial cult. It basically treated the emperor as a divine figure. And making a small sacrifice to him was a simple, public way for anyone from any background to show they were loyal to the state. It was a really powerful tool for forging a common identity in such a diverse place. The Romans were also masters of pragmatism when it came to administration. Instead of trying to micromanage every single province, they just co-opted the local elites. They offered them power and status in exchange for loyalty. And what happened? These local bigwigs then competed with each other to build baths and temples and aqueducts, which not only made life better in the provinces, but also helped to Romanize them, all without costing the central government a dime. All right, so if this whole Roman system was so well engineered and so resilient, why did it fall? Well, here's the twist. It didn't. At least not all of it. The collapse of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century is this dramatic story, yeah, but it's really about how even the most enduring systems have a breaking point. And when you compare the Western and the Eastern halves of the empire, the difference is just striking. The West had these long, vulnerable land borders that were really hard to defend. It was also poorer, less urban. The East, on the other hand, was the commercial heart of the empire, and it had Constantinople, an almost impenetrable capital. But the single biggest difference? Adaptation. When crisis hit, the West's systems just shattered under the pressure. The East, however, was able to bend, restructure, and ultimately survive. And the East's secret weapon for survival was this thing called the theme system. It was a radical idea. The state gave land directly to farmers, and in exchange, those farmers owed hereditary military service. This one brilliant move created a loyal, motivated local army of men who were literally defending their own homes and families, all at a minimal cost to the state. It was another masterclass in Roman adaptation that kept the Eastern Empire going for another 1,000 years. So when you put it all together, what was the secret to Rome's incredible endurance? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was this powerful combination of factors: a lucky head start from geography and climate, a military that was never afraid to reinvent itself, a deeply integrated economy, and a political system that was just brilliant at turning conquered peoples into loyal Romans. It was a complex, interconnected machine built to last. But Rome's story is also a huge cautionary tale. It shows us that these deeply interconnected systems, as resilient as they are, can also be incredibly fragile. It shows that even the strongest structures can collapse when they're pushed too far. And that really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What about the complex systems we all rely on today? Our global financial system, our power grids, our supply chains. Are they as resilient as we think? Or are they too rigid to adapt when the next big crisis hits?